Nice. Okay, I think we can potentially get into it, at least do some uh, um, introductions and just, a bit of a meet and greet. So for those who know me, we run a business architecture training program. Um, really looking to decipher the BizBOK guide, which was quite a bit of work, I won't deny that, to do, and really put it into some kind of, I suppose, structure. So Ovidiu, and I do mispronounce it slightly, but I hope that I'm doing a good enough job. He's one of our, let's call him star students or whatever, but we've been having conversations for several months now. And what was really interesting was your approach to your learning and, how you were preparing for your exam and what you were doing, which was very different. So for those who do know the course, we have a section called assignments. Most people don't do them, but there are a few crazies out there that decide to do it, and I actually quite enjoy it because I get to read what you're saying and what you're doing and actually get some time to interact. So Ovidiu, I'd like you to introduce yourself, and maybe if we can just start with what got you interested into business architecture as a start.
Hi everyone, I'm Ovidiu Nanuti. I live and work in Quebec City in the French-speaking province of Canada. I work for Lavio Consulting, which is a consulting company, and we have mostly the transformation projects and in artificial intelligence, and mostly the IT development and application development, all kind of projects. And our clients are in the public organization and also private ones, banking, insurance, and so on. And most of my assignments are as an agile coach. And as an agile coach, I work with a lot of roles. And one of the roles of those roles are the enterprise architects and business architects. So what I did, I just decided to enlarge my knowledge and to follow the, let's say, a well-structured course like Agora Insights offered, and as a facilitated way to achieve the CBA certification. So I was searching for a training provider, and I found Deirdre and her training program, which I follow in I think for 35 or 40 days. So I followed the sessions, and when it comes to make the assignments, I decided to have a different approach. So I decided to apply a different technique to do those assignments, and I decided to make some concept maps. I don't know if you are familiar with concept maps, but it's a really interesting technique that was proposed by Joseph Novak in the 70s. So it's not rocket science. It's just a nice way and a well-structured way to represent knowledge, to achieve what we call the meaningful learning. It means that it's a good way to integrate some new concepts and plug these concepts on the knowledge that you already have. And it's a good way because you visualize the new concepts, you link them with some words, and you will generate phrases, and those phrases will lead you to achieve the way to transform the information into knowledge. I don't know if you can share some of those concept maps.
So maybe just give a little bit of a background. I'm going to just quickly share this. Give me 1 minute. There we go. Can everybody see this all right? Okay. So just on a
Sorry,
background.
would you mind just zooming in slightly? My eyesight's not that good.
Yes, I will
Thank
actually zoom in and out. We've actually got 10 here, so some of them are bigger than, but let me zoom in for now, and then we can have a chat. So firstly, just to give some context for everybody, what we've done in the training is we've broken down the BizBOK guide into 23 chapters, for those who don't know. And the top 10 chapters, which I suggest people do assignments on, is really around the primary activities of business architecture. So we look at capabilities, we look at organizations, we look at value streams, information maps, strategy, policies, I'm trying to remember all of them, stakeholders, products, and so forth. So we look at, let's call it the architecture stack. And that stack, we break the chapter down into all of the components that are in the BizBOK guide, but really just to give an idea of the foundation of business architecture. Now, with what Ovidiu has done is he's basically taken and summarized each chapter. So that's what we're looking at. So passing it on to you, so just some context of how we got here.
Yeah, I don't know if you have read the BizBOK, but BizBOK it's a huge body of knowledge. So if your native language is English, maybe it will be easier. But for someone whose English is not the first language, it's kind of tricky to read it from the beginning to end. So I think that it's a good way to.
I think you need to be
summarize.
native to find that tricky.
Yeah, I can
tricky.
imagine. Has, I think, almost 1,000 pages. I don't know the last version, but the version 6.5 that I attempted to read, it was, I think, almost 800 pages. So it's kind of difficult to read it and to assimilate all the content. I think the concept mapping, it's a good technique that we can apply to extract all the meaningful concepts and to relate them and to define them and to put them in the relation with other concepts. So what I did for the capacity, it was to define what is the capacity, to see what are the way to classify the capacities with stratification, and when I with capability, sorry, I said capacity because capacity is a French term, so sometimes I mix them. So capability, I defined what it provides, what serves that, and what exactly try to validate. And then I defined what are the who's member of the mapping team, because why? Because once we define the capability, the next step is to map the capabilities in an enterprise. And then I try to map what are the approaches for the capability mapping, the top down, bottom up, to the derivative, all the approaches that are defined, that are explicitly defined in BizBOK. And then the leveling, I try to summarize everything, to put every concept and every, let's say, meaningful concept about capability in a single page. also the heat mapping. It was I found a way to represent it in a visual and meaningful way by using the colors that are integrated with this kind of mapping. So I found that it's a good way to represent and to make those concepts meaningful, and also it's a good way to represent visually the concept that's let's say problematic. That means that the concept that you're not mastering enough, that it's a good way to explore them and to fill the gaps between what you know already and what you understand and what you don't understand already. And it's a good way to put the finger on the concepts that you have to dig deeper to understand them and to make them put them in the relations with other concepts.
Yeah, I think and please, if anyone has any questions, just interject. That would be very helpful. The key thing with BizBOK is a lot of the chapters are not broken down into, particular areas. So the first thing with the course was to try break it down into a particular area and kind of categorize it into things like purpose, the descriptions, looking at the mapping. So there's a lot of content, especially in this chapter. This chapter is, I think it's about 2.5 hours of learning. So it's fantastic to have this summary, because when you actually, so what you've done is basically gone and said, these are the sections that we work with in this particular chapter, all the components around capabilities and all the things that we need to know. And then even down to the level here, which is quite important, because for those who, and I know that sometimes when we do training, we look at it and we go, okay, do I really need to tell somebody how to heat map? Because, it's really sometimes too low level. But what we've done with the course, and this is why I'm happy to see this, is that the exam does go through multiple levels. So you can go from a very high level, what's the idea of a capability, down to, what color do you use if you haven't classified a capability yet. So and we'll talk to Ovidiu about his exam experience in a minute, but this is why it was so great seeing those breakdowns, because even though they're on different levels, there's still components that really need to be understood. So that's not the only one that he's done, and we will provide attendees with the materials. So kudos to you. Also looking at breaking down the value streams. I don't know if there was any particular one. I'm going to go into the big one in a minute, but was there any particular one that you wanted to talk about?
Yeah, maybe I don't know if you intend to share the scenarios. That's the big one. Before that, maybe we can take a look at the information mapping.
I agree. Actually, information maps can be quite challenging, and I struggled with this a lot initially. So let's just go into this. But yeah, if you could explain a little bit around this, would be great.
Yeah, so I explained what exactly is the information, and then I touched the components, let's say, of the information maps, mostly the business objects. I try to explain and to synthesize what exactly is a business object, what he may represent, and what should include, let's say, this kind of abstract object that we try to represent in those maps. About the information map, I try to illustrate also the guidelines that are proposed by BizBOK about the identification of information concepts, then categorization, defines and identification of information concept types. So all these steps and these guidelines will, I think, that are important to know and to represent them in this way to understand exactly how to build this kind of information map and what is, let's say, a useful guideline to achieve this information mapping activity.
It's actually interesting because the more I study and the more that I go into architecture and various other realms, I actually think this is the most important one to learn because it really is. Now, I'm not talking in terms of exams or anything like that. I'm talking about in the profession, because fundamentally this anchors a lot of what we do in organizations. So having a good set of information concepts where we can define, we're using the same language, we're not, taking what's happening with project managers or business analysts who all have different defined languages and concepts, and trying to, design maps. So I think from a foundational point of view, this is probably the most important piece of work. In fact, in BizBOK, there's been a couple of discussion boards going on about this at the moment, which get a bit heated, and I choose to maybe keep it a little bit quiet. But there certainly is something to this particular piece of work. So once you have gone through, for those and I always say there's two different types, and you need to know where you're at. If you focusing on getting your badge and your certification so that you can actually have the conversations in the organization, then that's your first step. But once you've got it, there might be some areas that you could really, add value to, and I think that this is potentially one of them. All right, no questions around.
I would like to add that it's the most difficult part is to represent, let's say, that the dynamic knowledge of the thing, because the static one, what information is, what is not, and what is trying to achieve the mapping, it's easy to represent. The difficult part is to represent, let's say, the dynamic part, and mostly the guidelines. The thing that it's difficult to find a way to explain how do you do the mapping, what exactly are the steps, and to represent, to put the knowledge in this way and the information in this way to make sense and to make someone understand what exactly he has to do when he's trying to map the information.
Exactly. So this, for once you've done with your learning, let's say for your certification, I do advise that you go into a bit more. I'm actually doing my master's on this at the moment, so that's why I'm having a little bit of a more conversation looking at information concepts and how we bridge that with our product catalogs, all of those, because those are really important components, because you're basically setting up a language structure. So I think it's fantastic that you've broken down the key areas here, definitely with BizBOK. And yes, I would advise anyone who just wants to explore a little bit further than just certification to maybe look at some of those forums and see what they're doing here. All right. By the way, for your exam, because obviously we don't know anything, we have an idea of how the exam is structured, But which components did you find the most challenging, Ovidiu, in terms of your exam? And James, you've also recently passed yours, I believe.
Not
So there's a couple of you actually, but yeah, what was your experience with that and particular questions that might help other people?
Yeah, first of all, I didn't pass the exam yet. I planned to do
Oh,
it, but
didn't you?
didn't have the time actually to pass it. So I can't give you my feedback about this, but
Okay, sorry about that. Oops. Well, James, you've just done yours, right?
Yes, I did it back in August.
Yeah. So maybe if you
So
could just give a
now,
couple of tips around these
sure.
bits and pieces.
Oh, now you're asking me to remember. Yeah, no, but look, I actually agree with you completely. I think for me, this information piece was the hardest concept for me to grasp. Although I don't necessarily think it's necessarily a difficult subject. For me, it's that application of this, which I think is probably the more for me, that was a bit more of a struggle to kind of grasp. I think the others kind of speak for themselves. In terms of the exam itself, you know, the questions are very heavily oriented around these first 10 chapters of this book, as you would expect, and I think particularly swayed towards the kind of the capability value chain piece up front. But I guess in terms of the exam itself, I think your chapter 10 was incredibly helpful. There is a huge amount of information to digest in chapter 10, but I think those Excel spreadsheets that you've provided, I think were really helpful, particularly from a scenario standpoint around where you apply these concepts, these tools. That puts you in a really good position if you familiarize yourself with that really well.
Yeah. Yeah. Awesome.
Sorry,
So
hopefully that was what you were
no,
looking for.
that's good because really the exam is structured in such a way you've got your primaries, which I call the first 10 chapters, but then it tests your reasoning. So this is the chapter now which I thought Ovidiu did so well because this is basically the chunk of it where it says, okay, well, how does all these mappings and these blueprints, how in what scenario does it work? So maybe let's go into this. So let me just show you the overview. As you can see, it's pretty large. And you did add the additional ones that came in this year. So BizBOK historically update every 6 months. I've had a few fights about that. But they're now going to be updating once a year. You know, it's just to manage content and manage exams and things like that. But they did add 2 chapters, which you have put in around twin, somewhere here, digital twin, and I'm just trying to think, what was the other new one? It was customer-centric model. So, so what happens, and I'll let you explain in a minute, but what happens is we learn about the practice of architecture in each of those modules, and then we learn about a scenario where you might want to use your different business architecture practices. So let's do a bit of a zoom in. I'll hand it over to you, Ovidiu.
If you want to zoom on the business IT transformation, I think it's the most common one.
Let me just get there.
A little bit up.
Up, sorry. Oh, there we go. Let me just zoom in.
So what I did, I put in this concept map, in this branch, the main components of the knowledge base and how they are related in this particular scenario. I think the first thing to do when you try to let's say to attack the certification and to demystify the the BizBOK is to understand well all the knowledge base, and all the concepts that are in the knowledge base. Why? Because when you look at the scenarios, you will always work with these concepts, and everything is about these concepts and this let's say this core knowledge concepts that are in this knowledge base. So the first thing in this scenario is to identify the customer. Why? Because if there is no customer, there is no transformation. So the transformation is done by the customer. And the customer, when we talk about the customer here, the customer is a special kind of stakeholder that is triggering and is participating in the value stream. And also the value stream, if there are no customers, there are no value stream. And if there is no value stream, there is no enterprise, it's no organization. So everything is linked, every concept is linked to another, and everything together makes sense. But to make this sense, you have to understand, and you have to have every concept clear in your mind. So about the value stream, when you talk about the value stream, you have to identify what is the stages and what is the focus of the stages in the value stream in this scenario. The next step in this scenario, it was to identify the product that is corresponding to value stream, the same product that are delivered to customers, and a special kind of product are the services that are non-tangible and kind of products that you can see, you can touch, and you can't store them. You have to deliver them in real time. And then enabling capabilities here from target value stream and from target products are also an important part of this scenario, and capabilities that target automation requirements and transformation of existing automation. Here in transformation, it's important to understand what is the link between those capabilities, and the fact that even if you have automized those capabilities, they are still capabilities, and you have to treat them like with the business perspective of the subject. That's in my opinion, it's the most, let's say, synthetic picture of this scenario. If you want to read it, of course, yeah, you will have to read, I think, a few pages with dense content, and it's not easy to digest, in my opinion. For maybe I speak from my point of view, or from someone who doesn't speak English daily, but it's I think it's a good way to represent and to make sense of this content and on these scenarios.
Yeah, I agree. So how the content is set up in terms of your BizBOK and your course is you've been trained step by step on all of the activities, and then here it's almost an opportunity to look at a context and say, okay, well, what would we do? So even though in this case it's prescriptive according to your BizBOK and your exam, it's not limited in this sense, but it's trying to show you how the relationships, how the links would come together and how they would work. Now, in real life, because that's important too, we find with a lot of business change, because there's no clear blueprint, what happens is you get business analysts, and I know all about this. You get business analysts who basically have to run around and ask people for information. It's just crazy. And so once you've got the right mapping and the right structures in place, then you have the opportunity to to make this much quicker and much faster. And we've actually had cases, not in farmlands, but in PGG and a couple of other businesses that we've worked with, that have pre-developed their business capabilities and their kind of structures, and reduce the time of requirements capturing from a traditional 4 months to 6 days. So I always say it's quite hard when you talk about business architecture as a concept, because it's abstract. But it's the same thing. If you're going to build a house, you want to get a whole bunch of people asking them how to build a house, and then they just kind of brick it up. Or do you want to get someone to design it for you, and that's really what we're discussing here. So there's multiple scenarios that you've drawn. Thank you, especially some of these ones. I still need to add this to the training. It has been a little bit busy, so apologize, but I was assured it's not in any exams, so that's all right for now. But these are the, I think it's lovely because it just really just gives you an idea. So once you've gone through some of that content, you can start visualizing and understanding it. So you've done an amazing job. How long did this take you, by the way?
Let's say, I think that the big one, the one that we see actually right now on the screen, took me, let's say, between 45 and 60 minutes.
Oh, that's not so bad. I thought you were going to say
Not so
hours.
bad.
I was
But I have
like, wait,
experience
what?
because I use concept map since I think that it's almost 12 years. I use them a lot in my trainings, in my analysis work, and even when I have some, let's say, some mapping sessions with my clients. I use a lot of
Visualization.
concept mapping. And also the tool that I have used is Visio. It's not something rocket science. I took the template for the brainstorming, and I used let's say the dynamic link and the subject and the main subject as forms. And it's easy once you are able and you understand how the technique should be used. It's quite you can draw rapidly maps that represent the knowledge that you want to represent.
That's great. There are a couple of people here that actually are also busy doing mapping. Tomasile, I see you here. A little bit more on the process side. So this is an awesome piece of work, and the idea is that it's an aid to your learning. I think for those who are still in that preparation stage, I don't know if you have any questions you want to ask, but we will kindly, Ovidiu has offered for people to have a look at this freely and use it as part of their learning. So we do have a community page, and it was my intention initially to put it into the course. I had a couple of people going, why is there more content? It says I haven't reached my progress. So, I do kind of struggle sometimes knowing what everyone will like and what they'll be happy about. So if you do see it, then it means that the majority have gone here, put it in. If you don't see it, then it means the majority have said put it somewhere else. So we do have the library, which we will be putting things into. And obviously, I thought it was a great summary in each chapter, just so that you can solidify your understanding and so forth. And as I said, the assignments have been quite a surprise for me. I just didn't imagine what might come out of it. So it's been awesome. Thank you for that. I'm going to just stop the screen share for a minute, unless there's any questions. So there are 12 of these breaking down. There we go. And I just want to go into the community pages and the site, if that suits everyone. Ovidiu, do you have any other things you want to add? I'm just adding lib here, so if you want to. Oh wait, yeah, some chats. Oh,
Maybe it
okay.
would be good to have some discussions about the role of the business architect in the real life, and how
Yes,
it's seen in different parts of the world. I can share my
okay.
experience and how it's seen here in Quebec.
Would be great. Um, so let me just summarize with this, and then we can just open up the floor to have a conversation. I think that would be awesome. So quick share, just so people know how to navigate through this. Desktop 2. So as you see in the course, I've popped it in. I see the comments, people have said yay. Okay, good. So I did pop it in just as a visual summary initially. And like I said, some people were like, why? And other people were like, yay. So just as a bit of a test. But for those who are looking to find it, we are busy building the community page, and there's lots of things here, that lots of content that we're still building. So I started with, like, you can go into particular modules, ask particular questions, and there will be content here to have a look at. So, and everything I've looked to categorize, but obviously everything can be improved, because initially it was just one big post. And then now I've realized, well, we're getting a bit content heavy now. So we need to separate those into different areas. So you will be able to access it here. And just a reminder, you've got quite a few modules. So I just wanted to show you the modules quickly. The ones that we're talking about, what I call the primary ones, the 10 ones which Ovidiu has done the diagrams for, are these. So from module 1 through to module 10, which is, this is all about the practice of business architecture. And then this is around the big picture thinking in terms of the governance, the roles, and the scenarios. So this is quite a hard chapter, because it's basically a read, and it's a spreadsheet, and now at least we've got this visual. So yay, thanks very much. That's great. So, okay, so let me stop sharing for a minute, and let's go into our conversation. You got lots of people giving you kudos, by the way, on the chat forum.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to share with you my vision on the BizBOK, body of knowledge.
Yeah.
So I would like to have a chat and to have a discussion about the role of business architect, and how it seems, what is exactly the role, and what are the responsibilities of this role. And I can share my perception about this role here in the province of Quebec. And I can say that in our province, it's business architect. It's like an emerging role. It's still on the market since, I think, for more than 10 years, but the role is not understood. Most of the business architects, they don't know that there is a body of knowledge, and most of them, their role is just to write business cases and to gather and to elicit requirements, which is mostly a role. And if you look at this kind of task and this kind of activities, when you know that the role actually it's the role of the business analyst. So there is a lot of confusion between the business analyst and the business architecture role. That's one overlap that I can see in all kinds of organizations, in public ones, in the government, but also in the private ones, in the banking and in insurance. Another overlap I can say that is between the IT and the business. Why? Because the limit is not clear. It's really flu. It's really not clear, especially when we talk about the information. In the information, it's seen as being under the responsibility of the IT, but actually in reality should be in the responsibility of
business.
of business. And when you talk, I recently had a discussion with one of my clients, and I said to the business architect, with the person that had the title of business architect, if he's considering to have information mapping, he said, "Oh my God, no, that's not my responsibility. This is the IT guys that will do it." So it was not even conceived that he can touch this kind of let's say IT reserved activity. That's my let's say my perception about how the profession and how the role it's been considered here in Quebec. I can say also from the last 2 years, we see that there are some, let's say, some concerns about the profession, and the local chapter of IIBA now has joint meetings with the business architecture guilds, and we see that we have some more webinars in French language, and we have more sharing of experience of, let's say, real business architecture concerns from people engaged in this this kind of role.
There, okay, so just there's a question here quickly, which is not around the role, but I will show you a screen of the role differences, which is actually a really good article. But the question here is, how long does a student have to finish the course? Okay, so you have a year. You need to have about 70 hours to finish the course. I don't know, everyone's different. I've had one person that's done everything in 3 weeks and wrote the exam, and I nearly had a nervous breakdown because I was like, how do you know you're ready? Anyway, he was very, very brave about that. But for most people, it does take approximately 6 months just to digest the information and go through it. It really is up to the individual person. So you do have a year to plan. I always say plan backwards, and there is a scheduling tool if you need. And let me just share the screen now of this. Okay, so just I found this this is quite good in terms of defining the role of business architect. And business architect, again, like if you think you're going to be building a house, it makes a lot of sense that you get the architect to design it for you, but not necessarily that you're going to all of a sudden have to do all these interviews and people working with. So the role for me is quite clear, but because a lot of I suppose IT, a lot of things are unclear in any projects that we work with IT, then it can be quite challenging. So the role, according to this article, is really looking at what do you do. So in terms of a senior business person, you're looking at translating the business direction. You're looking at informing. So absolutely, information maps is necessary to be able to do that. You're looking at recommending and working on the governance. So this is very aligned with what is being said in your BizBOK. You're also looking at stewarding, maintaining, reporting to around your scenarios. So it's not so much around owning it or being responsible, but really you are the steward of that. Now, different to what I would say would be more of your business analyst role is where you are using that information in a business context. So you're using it in a project, or you are making sure it's part of the initiative. So the role is almost separate. And so a business analyst to me is more of, like the builder manager, managing the crew. I know it's not a very neat discussion, but that is how I would see the difference between the two would be. Whereas this is more around, so, and then just generally around operations. So the whole thing around architecture is designing, stewarding, making sure that the role is understood in terms of being there to provide the insight that's required, but not necessarily having to go into deep dive in that you might do with, let's say, functional analysis or solution analysis or any of those things. Does that align with what you're saying? Yeah, James?
I think just a quick observation from me. Sorry, I'm talking so much. What I'm finding in the Sydney market particularly is that there's not a lot of delineation in roles out there in the market between a business architect and an enterprise architect. The perception that you're an enterprise architect, you can do all of this stuff. So there's not necessarily as many dedicated roles for a business architect out in the market, particularly in Sydney, which is, I guess, a bit of a learning curve for me, because this is kind of where I'm passionate about, rather than kind of the broader enterprise architecture piece. So I think it's just me understanding that journey and that application, because there aren't necessarily the dedicated roles out there. So it's how you kind of bring these concepts to your organization. And, while you may not have that kind of direct job title per se, you can still apply these concepts within your business.
Absolutely. And I think that's what people need to do, because that's when you can see the value. Because telling somebody that this is great doesn't necessarily motivate your manager type people. Yeah, go for it, Daryl.
Yeah, the way I'm looking at it, I mean, my title's enterprise architect, but fundamentally I see this as a function, and there'll be a variety of roles, particularly in the New Zealand market. We're not big enough to have, someone's, a team of business architects led by a manager and all that kind of jazz. So I'm actually looking to how I solicit people that sit in our business area functions as well, because they're doing some of the stuff whether they know it or not. And so actually bringing them together and helping us get a well-described view of our world is probably more important than for us anyway, getting tied up in knots around the roles, because I think that actually sets some walls in place. And one of the things I've noticed as I'm exploring these very opinionated positions, and I don't think it's helpful. We're all looking for the same outcome, and even I challenge people to stop using the phrase "the business," and because everyone that's sitting or got an employment contract with the firm they work for is the business. So why do you use the phrase? You know what it means. So this for me is just really about getting clarity on the function and value that outcomes or outputs this provides can deliver for the organization.
I think it's a really important concept, because if we don't understand the different functions, let's call them functions or roles, then we miss a real opportunity to understand what each other's doing. And that's where some of the challenges lie. So even if you don't have the title, but now you're saying, okay, I'd like you to develop a capability map, or I'd like you to be able to work on the scenario of business transformation and bring in our product line and bring in our, our customers and our organizational chart. Part of the problem is actually the language, because when you've actually studied let's say you've gone and you've looked at architecture and you've looked at these, then it's fine. It doesn't matter if your role is architect or not architect, but if you actually understand what it means, that's part of the important thing. So I think there's two discussions to be had there. The one is what are you doing in terms of your role and your capability or your competency, and then the second one is what is your job title, which is almost a different conversation completely. And I think that's where it gets a bit messy, because sometimes people get assigned to do a role like in a project, but they might not have the competency or even the capability to do it. And that's where, people are being thrown into projects and then we all have misunderstandings. And I think that's hard.
Yeah, couldn't agree more. We were actually talking about that yesterday at our leadership meeting, just around, we've got a number of business analysts here, but there's one area where that's about number crunching and financial analysis, not business analysts, so even that's a murky thing, and it provides confusion because a project manager asking for a resource doesn't know who they're asking for.
Yeah.
And then if you look at it from career development too, you've got to put that lens across it, and help, if you're caring about the teams and the people that you're managing, you've got to have a really clear way of describing you're here now, you want to get to there, you've got to do these things, kind of thing. So having the frameworks and a table like what you've got there help articulate that.
Yes, I think it's good to break it down and then see who has the competency to actually perform those tasks. And then hopefully they'll get the label that they look for at the end of the day. That would be good.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah. All right. So so this was just a good table. I actually do have a presentation somewhere and I was trying to look at it very quickly, but that was almost impossible to find. But if I do find it, I'll send through, because that's one of the things I get asked about a lot. And I thought, I should probably prepare something that might be helpful. So just, kind of came off the top. All right, we're reaching towards the end. I just want to check if there's any questions in the chat. Okay, thank you. Other James? All right, yeah. Okay, awesome. Let me just stop the share. So let's just open it up to any other questions or any other insights you would like to add in your learning, Ovidiu. How did you find it overall, and how confident do you feel now in terms of understanding the practice?
Yeah, I can say that I'm confident to pass the exam. I just have to find the times to do it.
Yeah.
When you're a consultant, time is your major problem.
It's your major income too.
Yeah.
So it's also your biggest opportunity. Yeah.
I think that when you achieve, when the concepts are clear and when the scenarios are, you make sense of those scenarios, I think you have all you need to pass the exam.
Yeah.
That's in theory. In practice, I will see it how it will go I hope in the next months.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure you'll be fine. All right, so there's a question, Thomasina. So in this table, is the table in the library? No, this presentation will be coming soon. I have not quite completed it. So no, unfortunately, not at the moment, but in the future, yes.
Okay.
All of the work that, there you go. Do you want to ask yourself? That's great.
Sorry?
I thought you wanted to ask a question directly.
Oh, no. I was just saying great that the presentation is coming. Thank you.
Okay, all right.
Yeah.
And you also doing some great work around processes, and so yeah, your assignments are coming up soon, aren't they? I think you just finished the last one, didn't you?
Just finished, the last one.
Yeah. So there's quite a few creatives in our group, which is fantastic. I think there's Matt that might pop up as well. So yeah, thanks everybody. I think that's all from my side. But if you do have anything you want to ask right now, now's a great opportunity. And Ovidiu, thank you so much for all your hard work. It's really helping everybody else in the group help, digest the content that we have with BizBOK. And so I really appreciate you sharing it willingly with everybody and giving them the opportunity to build their knowledge and their understanding of the BizBOK guide and the course and all of that.
Thank you. It's my pleasure to share it with the community, and I wish you good luck in your path to the certification.
Yes, and to you too.
Thank you.
Okay. So if there are no other questions, I'm happy to say it's lovely seeing some new and I won't say old faces because we shouldn't say that, right? New and recognizable faces, and well, at least some text names, and hopefully we'll catch up soon. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Thanks for organising,
Cool.
Deirdre,
Thanks
and
for your
thanks,
time.
Ovidiu.
Thank you.